LeVar, should Odell Beckham Jr. make the Rams Super Bowl favorites?
Well, Vegas says no. I mean, the odds were the odds, and as my man Jonas Knox would say, it lied there like a corpse. No movement, no anything. Went nowhere. So I'm going to sit there and I'm going to disagree slightly. I do believe that he's an upgrade from my man Deshaun Jackson for the simple fact that I think he just has more left in the tank. I think he has more left to prove. And quite frankly, the way that the divorce took place in New York and then now the divorce in, Cleveland, I just think that there's something there for Odell to be able to prove that he's still that, go figure, a 3-time Pro Bowler. Now, some may say it's a popularity contest. I tend to think that you got to be good enough to be considered a Pro Bowler, because I, too, was a 3-time Pro Bowler. I made about myself for 2 seconds. But, hey, nonetheless, this guy can play football. And I think that in all of the dramatics of everything that's been reported, we've lost sight of that. But when I look at these teams, you look at Tampa Bay. They beat Tampa Bay head-to-head without Odell Beckham, all right? They have Green Bay coming up. Those are my 2 favorites in the NFC. So they get a chance to play against Green Bay coming up here pretty soon. I think we'll know better what this Rams team is. I didn't like the fact that they couldn't handle the physicality against Tennessee when they played them, and that left me in pause in terms of how good can they be if they come up against a team in the playoffs that is going to ramp up the physicality of how they play against the Rams. But for me, looking at what Matthew Stafford represents, what the rest of this receiving core led by Cup could be if they stay healthy and Odell can kind of integrate into this scheme seamlessly, with the addition of Von Miller on that defense, can they become more dominant than they already are with Von Miller? I say absolutely they can. And can you become a more prolific offense in the passing game with Odell Beckham? I say unequivocally yes. So then you got to say that they're going to be a contender. But to say they're outright favorites just because of the addition of OBJ, I think they become better, but I'm not comfortable and confident saying that they are now the definitive favorites to be Super Bowl champs.
Wow. I mean, I think you have to already put them in the mix. They were already close to being favorites without Odell Beckham Jr. and Von Miller. When you look at the way this team is constructed, they're constructed like the great teams of L.A., the Lakers and the Dodgers. We don't want developmental guys. We don't want guys we have to wait and see if they can play or not. We want right now guys. And what the LA Rams have done is they've taken that Lakers and Dodgers model and put it into practice. That's why they went and swiped Jalen Ramsey. That's why they went and swiped Matthew Stafford. That's why they brought over Von Miller. And then the final piece is Odell Beckham Jr. because they wanted star power. And at the end of the day, it's a player's game. And typically the team with the best Jimmys and Joes are the teams that are able to overcome the X's and O's. And when I look at the Rams and I look at this offense right now, who are you going to guard on the outside? You have Odell Beckham Jr., Cooper Kupp, and Robert Woods. And even though Odell Beckham Jr. is not the OBJ that we saw in New York, he's still plenty good enough as a number 2 or whatever it is, the role that they want him to play. And so it is about giving yourself enough ammunition that when you get into the playoffs, if you need a big game, somebody can step up and make it happen. We saw it with the Buccaneers when Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski gave them a boost in the playoffs. It's not about him being a dominant player throughout the regular season. It's about breaking him out just in case you need him in the postseason. That's what OBJ can do for this Rams offense. And with Matthew Stafford basically transforming this offense from the movement-based passing scheme that it always had been under Jared Goff with all the play action to now being more of a traditional drop-back scheme. It's more empty, it's more spread, it's more get the ball out of Matthew Stafford's hands and let him go to work. I think this is a really nice fit once OBJ continues to recover from the ACL injury that really has plagued him throughout the season as he's trying to knock off the rust.
I do like Bucky's point about L.A. being a star town. You know, you could argue that Odell to the Rams is a bigger deal for TMZ than it is the Rams. You know, Odell is a celebrity. He ain't much of a receiver at this point. We know that from the stats, right? First 3 years, Bucky, first 3 years, 35 touchdowns. Last 4.5 years, 16.5 touchdowns. A lot of injuries. And, to LeVar's point about the Pro Bowl status of Odell Beckham, I woke up this morning early, looked at the calendar. I said, boy, Odell Beckham Jr. is relevant. Cam Newton is on the Panthers. And the Warriors have the best record in the NBA. What is this, 2016? What is going on here? Because, LeVar, I know you love to hype Odell's creds being a Pro Bowler, but he hasn't been a Pro Bowler for a while, okay? I don't see how a number 3 receiver on a team, and Bucky articulated that's what he is, after Kupp, who is arguably the best receiver in the league, leads the league in receptions, targets, touchdowns, yards. Cooper Kupp's been dominant, and Robert Woods is tough. Frankly, I was at that Chargers-Browns game, guys, and you could see the beginning of the end for Odell Beckham. He wasn't hustling back to the huddle after all his deep routes in which Baker did not throw the ball to him. He had a key drop on 4th down. Bucky, you can look at the tape this year. Maybe it is the ACL. That's a fair point. But I just didn't see the Odell I saw early in his career. And LeVar, he is 29 years old. I don't know how he unlocks anything that Stafford hasn't done because, I see the over-under for the Rams at 12 wins, but I actually think that's probably 12 days until Odell starts complaining. Stafford, get me the ball. Stafford, give me the rock. That's all he does. We saw it in New York. We saw it in Cleveland. LeVar, that's the big problem. Is it's going to hinder Matt Stafford, given Odell's history of petulance and I'm a star, get me the ball?
$10 word. Come on, throw the dollars in the dish. Hey, listen, I understand all of that, but I'm not willing to hang up the phone on, man, hang up the phone, 2021. I'm not hanging up the phone. I'm going to ride with Odell. I'm going to ride with OBJ right now. And the reason why is because he's coming to a market where it's like getting vitamin D as a plant. It's like being somewhere that's in your natural habitat. Great white sharks cannot live in captivity. You know why? I don't know why. Maybe you do, but it's never happened. They got to be in the ocean, baby. They got to be in their natural habitat. You know where OBJ's natural habitat is? A big market. His best seasons was in the number 1 media market. Now he's in a number 2 media market. Throw him up and down, which way. He has a home here already. He's familiar with this area. He knows the people. He knows the terrain. This is vitamin D. This is solar energy. OBJ is coming to a place where he knows he is wanted. He exists in a way where, well, it's like not in Cleveland. He will fit in well with this group of people. Let me tell you something. He's not coming in to be Cooper Kupp. He's not coming in to be anybody else, Robert Woods. He's not coming in to be anybody else but OBJ. And you know where it matters and it makes sense and it fits in L.A.? It fits in L.A. So to me, when I look at this opportunity for OBJ to come and play for a team that is already, as Bucky mentioned, they could be already considered a favorite to win the Super Bowl already. He doesn't have to come in, even though the debate is, can OBJ or does OBJ make this team a definitive favorite for the Super Bowl? He doesn't have to come in with that weight on his shoulders. All he has to do is come in and do what he does best with that repaired knee, with the opportunity to repair his reputation, which is run good routes, be fearless, catch the ball. We know that OBJ can still do those things. And if he does that in Los Angeles, he becomes possibly even a bigger star than what he's already been thus far in his career, not even having seemingly as much as he's done in those 1,000-yard receiving years that he's had, which, by the way, isn't too far removed. I believe 2 seasons ago, he had a 1,000-yard receiving season with the Cleveland Browns. So he can get the yards, he can get the catches, and he can produce. I'm not hanging up on OBJ yet. I think this is the perfect opportunity, in fact, for him to revive his career and be a positive contributor to the team that he's on, Bucky.
Hey, LeVar, here's the thing, and you know this because you're a big time player when you're in the league. It takes a couple things for a playmaker to get off, particularly at wide receiver. It takes a passer and it takes a play caller. And I don't think that we could ever say that he's had a great passer, and I don't know if he's ever had an A-plus play caller in his career. Well, now he gets that in L.A. So all the excuses are off when it comes to, OBJ, he doesn't have an elite quarterback, he doesn't have an elite play caller. Because here's the thing when you talk about OBJ and maybe why it didn't necessarily work in Cleveland. In Cleveland, it's a rigid system where the wide receivers are expected to basically scoop out vanilla ice cream. No sprinkles, no chocolate sauce, no caramel, no whipped cream on top. I want you to go to point A and go to point B, and the ball is going to be there. OBJ is Picasso. He's an artist. He needs some freedom to be able to express himself through his route running ability. And so when you have an elite play caller, what you do is you design some things where you give him a little freedom. Hey, you got time on this, so if you want to put a little stutter in this, you can do that. Hey, if you want to run the deep post corner and you want to add a little something to it, we got you because we're going to max protect and we're going to do this so Matthew Stafford can did it. Oh, you want to take it a little deeper. Guess what? My quarterback has the arm talent to be able to push it down the field. All of those things happen and must happen for a wide receiver to be great. In fact, I would probably contend I don't know of a great wide receiver in this league who's not playing with a great quarterback. Because as much as you say you saw OBJ walking back to the line, because when you're playing wide receiver and not touching the ball, you know what you're doing, Jason? You're exercising. You're running wind sprints. That's what you're doing. You're out at the park just running up and down the field, working on your cardiovascular exercise. That's what you're doing. But now when you have an opportunity to get the ball, you're involved. And to think in a big game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where you only touched it one time for 6 yards, one time, that big old call sheet only had one play for OBJ. But I don't think that's going to happen in L.A. And because of that, you're going to get a more engaged OBJ, and you can get one who's going to be more productive because he gets the opportunities to be productive.
See, now that's good. That is strong, Bucky. I will agree. I'm going to pause on the whole Picasso comparison. That's a bridge too far for me. That being said, Bucky, we're talking about the offense that was number 2 in efficiency to this point of the season. They have one of the best records in the NFC. They are tied with Arizona for the second best odds to win the Super Bowl. Offense wasn't the problem. They didn't need. Odell is a luxury item. They didn't need him. Cooper Kupp is doing fine. Robert Woods, injuries kind of have hobbled him a little bit in the last couple of years. But did they need Odell Beckham? You could argue no. And again, I will push back on the whole Matt Stafford thing. I like him a lot as a quarterback. I defended him for many years in Detroit. I believe he has 0 playoff wins. And guess what's going to happen come postseason? Odell Beckham is going to blame, just as he did in New York, oh, Eli Manning's a problem. Oh, yeah, Eli Manning, 2-time Super Bowl winner. He was the problem. And then you go to Cleveland. Wow, Baker Mayfield's a problem. Odell could have told his dad, hey, take down that dumb video you posted on Instagram about him not passing me the ball. What's going to happen when failure occurs, when adversity hits with the Rams? Odell and his camp are going to put the blame on Matt Stafford because that's all they like to do, redirect it. I'm not the problem. I'm a celebrity. I'm the highest paid Nike athlete in the NFL. I'm not the problem. It's the other guy. And that's just what I haven't liked, Bucky, from Odell Beckham. It's always someone else. I'm never the problem. And I think he's got to look inside and be like, whoa, if I'm so great, a 3-time Pro Bowler, why have I been traded twice? Why did I clear waivers? Nobody wanted me.
Yeesh.
I don't know, Bucky. I think you're gassing up Odell a little bit too much.
Let me push back on the point of getting touched one time, the one-time touch. Do you realize that OBJ was the most targeted receiver on the team? I didn't even realize that was a real stat. I had to go look it up myself and check it out. He was the most targeted player this season thus far. So to me, it's not about the targets. I still think it goes back to the confidence between him, the play caller, and the person who's delivering the ball to him. Is Matthew Stafford the guy to do it? If he's not, there's only probably less than a handful of guys that would be that person, and that we know is not going to be what OBJ's reality is. Matthew Stafford is. This team is his last opportunity to prove that he can be either an elite receiver in this league or just can be the guy that really, really services his team in a way where he gives them that extra dimension where you cannot figure out what the coverage that's going to work against this offense. So the excuse book it's closed. But to say that he didn't get the opportunities because of a lack of touches, I'm not going to go as far as that, but with that being said, some of the throws as his daddy so well did. I mean, he did very well in putting together the case and the highlights or lowlights for Baker Mayfield. Those targets were to other people on the other team or just nowhere near the vicinity of where his child was in those route progressions. But he did get targeted the most on that team.
Okay, so I'm supposed to be okay if I'm Odell Beckham Jr. and I'm running a route and the ball is thrown in the stands, or it's thrown in the dirt, or it's thrown to the other team, but the play was called for me. I'm supposed to be okay because I was targeted theoretically. What I'm trying to say is, look, Odell Beckham Jr. has had some drops, absolutely, and those things should be accounted for. Odell Beckham Jr. is still recovering from the ACL and also playing with a shoulder injury. And when you put yourself out there, regardless of the injuries, we still evaluate you based on what you've done in your best moments. And so that is certainly something that we have to look at. But here's what I will say. At any time when he played wide receiver, were any of the quarterbacks more than bottom third quarterbacks, Eli Manning and Baker Mayfield, based on their statistical production or even how they played? No. This is the first time that he's playing with an elite quarterback. And once again, I will point to you. Please show me the wide receiver that is dominating the game that is playing with an average to below average quarterback. There's not one. And the only one that I can remember in recent years has been DeAndre Hopkins and what he did in Houston. And so at some point, when you're a wide receiver, you're dependent upon the person who is passing you the baton. He now has someone who can get him the baton in the exchange zone. So now if he drops the baton and we hear tink, 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 tink because he's dropping it, that's on OBJ.
That's true.
But prior to that, man, it's the first time he's playing with an elite level quarterback. Typically, that leads to elite performance for the pass catcher on the other.
All right, so Bucky, listen, I'm not going to try to defend Baker Mayfield. He has been up and down. But I do seem to remember last year when Odell Beckham got injured and Baker Mayfield performed admirably. I wouldn't say bottom third. I would say probably a top 13, 12 quarterback in the league and got Cleveland to the playoffs. Okay, they got to the postseason. And oh, by the way, yeah, I know the running game was the key. I get it. But without Odell Beckham, they got to the playoffs and they won a game. Okay, Odell Beckham did not play last week. They basically said, you're better off staying home than being on the field with us. And they go to Cincinnati and smash the Bengals as underdogs. Okay, I just don't like this, hey, he needs a good quarterback. Because you know what people are going to say next. Well, is Matt Stafford a good quarterback? I personally love him. I thought he made the Rams Super Bowl favorites when he went to L.A. back in February. See, LeVar's already shaking his head.
It's not fair.
I don't think it's fair to besmirch the name of Eli Manning, who I personally was never a fan of as a Jets fan. But the dude won, beat Belichick twice in the Super Bowl with big fourth quarter drives, okay?
I do agree with that,
okay?
Bucky.
Hey, credit to him for winning Super Bowls. But let's check his numbers. I think he led the league in interceptions 3 or 4 times.
That is factual.
I think when you look at the completion percentage, it is hovering right around 60%. Like, I will give him his credit for being a Hall of Famer because he won 2 Super Bowls, had 2 outstanding Super Bowl games. But let's not make him something that he's not. He was not an elite level quarterback for the majority of his career.
So how did Odell put up all those big numbers and get to 3 Pro Bowls and was like Randy Moss type pace after 3 years when he was with a crappy quarterback?
Check his yak numbers. Check the yards after catch.
Okay.
And how many of those short passes he turned into big games. Okay. That's what I would say. Part of the reason we fell in love with Odell Beckham Jr. is because he caught a pass that was off the board and made it a reception.
Which everybody does, by the way.
That's why we loved Odell Beckham Jr. Not because it was an accurate throw. The only reason we celebrate the catch is because the man nearly split his back muscles stretching out for a ball that was off the field that he made a reception. That's why. He elevated Eli Manning more than Eli Manning elevated him.
I won't go that far. I think Eli was a fine quarterback in the National Football League, despite what the stats and the percentages may say, and he was a Super Bowl MVP on top of that. But to the point that you're making, they had a running game. And this is the same thing I'm looking at with Baker Mayfield, and that's why I didn't think your assessment was fair, J-Mac, in terms of with them winning games without Odell Beckham. They could probably win games without Jarvis Landry. Their offensive line is one of the most elite in the game, people. Put Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or one of these super elite franchise quarterbacks behind that offensive line. What are you going to see in the game with that type of protection? All right? It's their running attack that is balancing out this team. It's their pass rush that's balancing out this team. It's giving them the opportunity to be able to control the game, control the time of possessions, and ultimately chunk out big yards on the ground and get into the end zone. So to me, it's their running attack. It's not Baker Mayfield. So I'm not looking at this like, oh, well, they could do it without Baker, do it without OBJ because they're so good in the passing game and they have so much talent. They do have so much talent at their pass receiving positions, even at their tight ends position. But it's not Baker Mayfield delivering these amazing performances through the passing game. That's the catalyst to them winning. So I think that's overstated. But again, to look at OBJ and what he brings to this Los Angeles Rams team is simply this. He runs awesome routes. He's a hard worker. No one will ever question this man's work ethic. His ability to do what he does on the field is because he pushes himself to the limits to be able to do what he's able to do. Nobody's going to question that. So he is going to have to work himself in to being that swing man, that guy that's able to do what Wes Welker did for Tom Brady, what AB was able to do for Tampa Bay last year when he came to that team. He's going to have to fit the role of doing some of the dirty work that's going to be needed and necessary to open up these defenses and preferably, probably running crossing routes, catching routes in the center of the field, getting those yards after the catch when he gets the ball. If OBJ can bring that to the table and catch that ball in the Serengeti, as I call it, because that's where them giants roam. That's where them lions roam, right out there in the center of the field. If he can get that ball in between those backers and those safeties and make yards of it, it turns this Rams team into a serious contender because it's going to open up the running game for them as well. And it's ultimately going to open up the outsides of the field, outside of those numbers and hash marks for for Kupp and for Woods. And that's where I believe the value of Odell Beckham Jr. will come into play for the Rams.
I'm sure people will think I've been way too harsh on Odell here to open the show. I'm a hater, blah, blah, blah.
You are.
I just want to ask you, Bucky.
You are.
Odell Beckham, super talent. We get that. We also know he wanted to be in L.A. to be closer to his girlfriend who's famous on Instagram.
Oh, here you go.
I do want to point out, if he wanted to go play with an amazing quarterback and a Super Bowl contender, why didn't he go to Green Bay and play for Aaron Rodgers? Was he perhaps afraid of the intimidation of Aaron Rodgers? He's not going to be able to boss him around. You can't bounce around Aaron Rodgers, 3-time MVP, Super Bowl winner. Matt Stafford hasn't done anything. Odell is a bigger star than Matt Stafford. In Green Bay, he would have got way more touches, Bucky. I think we agree, right? He would have been the number 2 receiver there, for sure, after Devontae Adams. I just wonder, if he really wanted to win and play for a star quarterback, why not Green Bay?
It's 90 degrees here today. I'm tripping.
I mean, the only thing I would say is pop open your app and look at the weather, and that is an easy answer. You can go to Green Bay, you can live in L.A. I think it's an easy choice to live in L.A., and that's me saying it as a former Packer.
Indeed.
All things considered, teams are close. Man, give me the warm weather.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here to get the latest from the show, and be sure to check out more of the best clips from Undisputed, or go watch a few other segments from our other shows on FS1.